Alberta Premier Danielle Smith lost a cabinet minister today over the ongoing Alberta Health Services allegations. You'll remember the former head of AHS says she was wrongfully terminated for uncovering evidence of wrongdoing by the province. The allegation is that the government interfered to secure overpriced medical contracts that would cost taxpayers double what a public hospital would charge. Infrastructure Minister Peter Guthrie resigned on social media this morning, saying, "In recent months, I have voiced concerns regarding the Government of Alberta's procurement practices across all departments. Unfortunately, the majority of Cabinet does not appear to share my concerns." This comes as MLAs return to the Alberta Legislature today for the first time since December 4th. Now, we reached out to the now former Minister Guthrie for an interview, but were unable to make that happen. We also asked to speak to Premier Danielle Smith, but was told she was not available. But with me now is the Alberta NDP leader, Naheed Nenshi. Mr. Nenshi, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Happy to be third choice anytime, David.
We just wanted to explain that the people with some accountability here were asked and did not say yes. But thank you. I mean, what do you make of this development today? It's one thing to have a minister resign because they are at the center of controversy. It's another to have a minister resign when they're protesting the controversy.
Well, here's the critical thing, which is that the minister at the center of the controversy, Adriana LaGrange, the Minister of Health, has not resigned, despite being perhaps the worst health minister in the history of Alberta. And what's fascinating about what former Minister Guthrie said is he said he's been aware for some time of these allegations. Meanwhile, the health minister has said she's been aware of these allegations for 8 months. But the premier says she only learned about this when she read about it in the Globe and Mail. So only one of two things can be true. Either you have a government where the ministers don't tell the premier or the premier's office that there are these allegations of massive fraud that could take down the government, or you have a premier who is not telling the truth. And I think Albertans deserve a premier who both tells the truth and knows what's going on.
Yeah, and I want to give credit where it's due. I believe it was Carrie Tate at the Globe and Mail who first broke this story, right? I think she had other reporters working with her, but Carrie Tate has been the main byline on all of these. Now, none of these allegations have been tested in court, but clearly it is testing the government. I mean, were you surprised by the resignation today by Mr. Guthrie?
You know, Mr. Guthrie did something similar to Jason Kenney when he was the premier, and ultimately he had written a memo to the cabinet suggesting that Minister LaGrange, the health minister, be removed. Somehow that got out to the CBC, and you know, he was probably in an untenable position here. But you know, good on him for doing this. The challenge is he's still sitting in that caucus, and I think that every single MLA in the UCP caucus, every single cabinet minister, has to be asking themselves the same question today. Do I want to be the one holding the bag when the music finally stops? Do I want to be in this government when the RCMP shows up and starts arresting people? Or do I want to be on the side of saying we want a full, transparent, judge-led public inquiry, which the premier has steadfastly refused to do, and actually get to the bottom of this and do this right? Well, the premier's in a really big pickle right now, and I'll put on my old Power and Politics panelist hat here for a second. This only ends one of two ways. It ends with her being cleared, or it ends with her ending her government career in the worst possible way with these allegations over her. And the only way for her to get herself cleared is to call a transparent public inquiry led by a judge to release the people who've been fired from their gag orders so they can tell us what happened, to fire the health minister, and probably for herself to step aside while the investigation is going on. And she has steadfastly refused to do any of it.
Okay, well, I mean, there's no indication of the RCMP coming and arresting anybody right now. I mean, we have sort of allegations and we have a wrongful dismissal suit. I mean,
and these are all allegations.
Yeah. So I just want to be fair.
Investigations open.
Understood, but I just want to be fair to where we are in this. So we did get a statement from Premier Smith, right, that she put out that she says she wants to reiterate, I was not involved in these procurement decisions, nor am I aware of any wrongdoing with regard to the issues raised, by the former CEO. Peter Guthrie resigned today. You think Danielle Smith should take some drastic action. Do you think this could lead to more calls for her to go? Because the Conservative parties in Alberta have a long and difficult history with their leaders.
They sure do. And, it was Danielle Smith when she was the leader of the Wild Rose who stood up every day in the legislature speaking out against corruption in the former PC government. And this is what doesn't make any sense. They handpicked a CEO of Alberta Health Services. There was no competition for one of the highest paid positions in the public service. They fired her. This is the fourth time they fired a CEO of Alberta Health Services. They fired their handpicked board, which included many deputy ministers. This is the second time they fired the board. The board can only be fired by an order in council. The premier chairs the council. So she's telling us to believe that she fired the most senior public servants in healthcare, that she dismissed an entire board that she herself has appointed, but then she never asked why they were being fired or why they were being dismissed, and she had no idea that there may have been wrongdoing. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, I got one last.
Premier who has no idea what her own chief of staff is doing, or you have a premier who's not being truthful right now.
No, and like even some of the columnists I've seen in the Alberta media ecosystem who are calling for public inquiries with judges leading them tend to skew more favorably towards Premier Smith. So it's interesting to see some of that dynamic. But look,
she's lost her support across her base. And even today in question period, there were 30 questions about the corrupt care scandal, and all she did was read things saying AHS's surgeries are too expensive over and over again.
Okay, I have one last quick question before I let you go. I called you opposition leader early. You're not, because you're not in the legislature yet. You are the NDP leader. You were seeking to run in a by-election in Rachel Notley's former seat that has been vacated. The by-election has not been called. Do you have any sense of when the Premier will call the seat so you can have your crack at getting into the legislature in Alberta?
Yeah, the Premier has, in the past, we had another by-election in the fall. She called it at the last possible second on the last day of final exams, so the university students couldn't vote. She has shown that she is willing to use her power to call a by-election for her own political advantage. I'm just saying, Premier, if you think Alberta's behind you, call the by-election today. I'm very happy to take on whoever you have there.
Okay. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi, thank you for answering our call. Hopefully Premier Smith or Mr. Guthrie will come on the show as well. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Thanks, David. Always a pleasure.